Good morning and welcome to Driving Force Radio, where we seek to discover what drives today's leaders. We have an amazing group of guests on the show today. They are from Platform 5280, the Biennial of the Americas. Platform 5280 is really this global celebration of ideas, art, and people. And we have three people from the organization with us. First, we have Erin Trapp, the Vice President of Advancement and External Relations at Metropolitan State College. Dr. Trapp served as Deputy Chief of Staff for the City of Denver and Mayors John Hickenlooper and Bill Vidal prior to going to Metro State. We also have Gayle Dendinger, the founder and CEO of CAP Logistics. He's been in the expedited freight services industry for over 30 years. He is also the founder and publisher of ICOSA magazine. His personal motto is that it's good business to be a good neighbor. And then we have Abaseh Mirvali, the Executive Director, CEO, and Commissaria of Platform 5280, the Biennial of the Americas. Prior to joining, Ms. Mirvali worked as the Special Advisor to the U.S. Ambassador for Culture and Education at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. Welcome to the show, Erin.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Abaseh. Welcome to the show, Gayle.
I've never met a commissario before.
Is that like Der Kommissar, the old song?
I just thought, I thought it sounded great.
Yeah, sounds good.
It does sound good. What does it mean?
It means, well, I was on a panel last year in Buenos Aires, and there were three of us that were in the independent curatorial and producing of projects that have art, education, and architecture design. And we decided that that just saying a curator or saying a director did not encompass all the jobs that we have to do, so that we were deciding that commissaria, which is more when you have a pavilion or like at the Olympics, the person that really does from the nitty-gritty of putting the program together, but then also oversees other components of it from marketing to organization. So we coined, we use that word. Now apparently in France they do refer very strictly to you being a curator and curating, putting together an artistic component, which I am doing. So I guess I can check the box on that. I qualify.
Jan, I'd like to be Prince of Wales just for the sake of this conversation.
Okay,
Erin,
that sounds good.
Like
Erin, what do you want to be?
I'll have to give it some thought. But
okay, we'll come back to that question. Well, I know in 2010, Denver was the host of the Biennial of the Americas, and this is really that next step of the Biennial of the Americas. And Erin, I want to start with you. You were engaged in the 2010 Biennial, and you're also engaged in the 2013 efforts. Tell me a little bit about what you've done and where it's going.
Sure. Really, the Biennial grew out of the efforts of former Mayor Hickenlooper to try to establish a cultural brand for Denver, if you will. We've really, in the past decade, come out of our shell as a center of culture in areas like arts, music, really. We've become the kind of city that people actually will come to and visit just for those things, let alone all the great outdoor environments and great sports teams that we have here. So his idea was to really put the whole package together in some kind of event that would help the world know that this was a great place to come for arts and culture, and went to some of the best thinkers in town at the time and started talking to them about this idea. The idea to do some kind of biennial or every other year effort to kind of showcase the best of what we are really started with Adam Lerner, who's now the curator of the Museum of Contemporary Art, and the idea to look north and south, as opposed to where we've traditionally looked in art, which is to Europe or Asia, came out of conversations with Adam, but also with the business community that said, you know, Mexico and Canada are some of our most important trading partners. A lot of people don't even know that. And if we could sort of turn everybody's attention north and south, we'd be able to point out not only that there's great art and culture in all of these places, but that we have great business connections in those areas too. You know, we get more oil from South America than we do from the Middle East. Canada is one of our top trading partners, but nobody really thinks of them. You always think about these other sort of hot button places. The other dynamic that we were trying to exploit is the fact that there are a lot of tensions in the border areas of this country between Mexico and the United States, and that Colorado was a little bit removed from the border areas, can be a place that's open-minded, that can really have important discussions about issues of the day that matter without getting too embroiled in the local politics and the really difficult issues that you have to face when you are buttoned right up against other states. So we thought it was a great place being centrally located in the Americas, and it would be a wonderful sort of jumping off point to be able to engage business folks, people who support art, who are often the same people,
Sure.
in an event that is international in scale, that really brings that spotlight to Denver and shows the world what we have.
Well, and Abaseh, I know you came in this last year to really sort of lead the charge in the Platform 5280 Biennial of the Americas that's coming in 2013. Talk a little bit about how you got here and what your expectations are for the biennial that's coming.
I was headhunted, and I was actually living in Mexico, and then my previous position was the executive director of the Fundación Colección Jumex, which is one of the biggest contemporary art collections in Latin America, and I established the foundation for the organization, and the foundation is engaged in a lot of social activity, mostly in the educational field. So I've been living in Mexico for the last 8 years, and this is my return home after a long time of being a U.S. diplomat and then going on to the foundation world. I'm very excited to have been able to have been tagged to do a project like this, because it does bring kind of both sides of your brain together. It brings the creative side, but also the side that is the thought process, the critical thinking, and has to do with your social responsibility as the business sector or as government entities. So it really brings together kind of, I would say, the pillars of the community, in that you have education and arts folk, but you also have the business sector, and then you have our colleagues in the non-for-profit and government sectors all coming together to see how we can redefine being locally active but thinking globally on issues. So if there was ever a project that defined the think globally but act locally, this would be it, because the changes that we affect will hopefully be at those more manageable arenas in our workplace, at the school where our kid studies, at the organization that we volunteer at our office, with our hours that we choose to give to public service. And that's where we affect change. But by doing it in unison with lots of other Jans and Gayles and Erins and Abasehs and other folk around the Americas, we hope to create a chain of activity that happens in many different communities. Okay. So that is where I came from.
Okay. And Gayle, I know you too were instrumental in the 2010 biennial, and now you serve on the board for the 2013 efforts. Talk about your involvement and why you're so engaged in this larger conversation here in the Americas.
Can I ask a question first?
Sure.
You're a PhD, right, Erin?
Yes?
Okay, and what's your background, education-wise, Abaseh?
Oh, I did my college degree in politics, not political, politics, the theory side, and Spanish Lit. And I did my graduate work in public policy, mostly development policy. And I went on to work on political campaigns and be a Foreign Service representative for our government, the United States government. And then I left to run the foundation.
Well, I think that it's not fair that I follow both of you, because I'm still working on my GED. This is kind of a tough act to follow. What you were asking about our involvement, we were sort of late adapters. Adopters? Adopters. See, that's my GED, lack thereof. It looked to us like one of the very best ideas ever to be able to go pull together North and South. Everything in this country seems to be East and West, and there is a natural affinity for us to go tie in with Canada and with Mexico. And I think that is one of the greatest things that's ever happened to this city. And then we're in such a great situation where we've got so many people that have ties to Colorado. What I understand is that more than half of the CEOs of the Fortune 1000 probably have some kind of connection in Colorado with respect to Aspen and Vail. So it seems like once we get this working, that there's going to be a natural reason for people to want to come here and make this more their second home. Mm-hmm. I applaud the work that you guys did last year, Erin and everybody else, and that you coming in here. You were talking about that you were headhunted, and I was part of the team that selected you. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things that impressed us was that you were trying to get into a facility that had the communication devices, my GED here again, and it was a holiday in whatever country you were in.
Switzerland.
It was Switzerland. So I was pretty sure it was Switzerland.
You're right. Now I forgot the My
Yeah,
interview was,
and
it was
so-
Pentecost.
Pentecost.
It was Pentecost, and all of the European cities were celebrating Pentecost.
And so there was a gentleman that showed mercy on you, let you inside the facility.
Cisco was closed.
To do
You're
a video
absolutely
conference, right?
I had a video. It was my second interview, a video conference
Right.
with you, Tom Williams, Ted White, and
Right.
Mike Freeze, our chair. And you're right, it was Pentecost, and the Cisco buildings were completely closed. There was no one around. And I found some poor soul who had just come to drop off some papers and take his mother for religious services, and begged him that if he really let me into the building, there was going to be 4 men on a screen. And he kept saying, but I can't leave you there. And I'm like, but can we just go and see if they're there? And we went in, and sure enough, you all were like 6 a.m. Denver time, going
Right.
like,
Well, you showed us a lot about character that day. You know, you hung in there, you made the thing work, and you weren't upset.
Thank
so,
you.
That was pretty good work.
well, you were
Well, and
pretty
that's
good.
the beauty of any of the work that the Biennial folks really do. It's that can-do attitude. It's the get-it-done stuff that gets done. And
It's
you
kind of
know,
the
for
beauty.
me, it's the Biennial of the Americas 2010. That's what it was when I participated. And the name has changed this time
It
to
has.
Platform 5280. And so obviously I want to ask, why did the name switch to Platform 5280, Biennial of the Americas? And really, what was the thought process and the meaning behind that?
One, we wanted to have the longest name possible. And no, but on a serious note, this project is all about bringing people together and affecting change that you otherwise on your own might not be. So it's all about the team, the community. And it needed to have a word that defined it. Platform is that word. Platform is a place that you offer up the ideas. There's no judgment. There's no hierarchy. There is just, it's a whether it's the physical form of it or what the word denotes, it's very egalitarian in its way of treating everyone. And I think this project has to be respectful of the many people that we hope to include in the conversation and the dialogue. So Platform was in honor of that, in honor of what the mission is, which you read, which is a project about bringing the different sectors together and breaking down these boundaries that we've all been kind of placed in, you know, whether you like art or understand art, whether you have a PhD or not. These are all labels, and at the end of the day, we're really, truly amazing people that have different loves and different interests, and we're trying to bring everyone together to find and pair up people.
Sure.
So we thought that Platform would be the best way, and 5280 was a way of saying that it is in Denver without saying Denver. It kind of rolls off really beautifully, and we still kept the Biennial in it. But I think this is a project that is a testament to the strength of people here in Colorado, of that entrepreneurial spirit, of that wanting to take risks, and having faith that it is going to work out, because you know it's a project that takes several years to put together.
Sure.
If you want to do it beautifully.
Well, yeah,
If you want to do
absolutely.
it well and you want to have impact that is long lasting, it takes time to build up those networks and relationships, particularly if you want to do it with the proper economic constraints. You know, it's not a project that costs $30 million or whatnot. So you need that time. So often we've got to have the faith that this project is going to deliver what it's meant to deliver on July 16th, 2013. But in this period, getting to that point, it's really having faith in the partners that you've picked, that you've done that right job, because you don't have anything tangible to offer up until next year.
Erin, I want to come back to you. You know I read on some of the paperwork that came through and some of the bigger, broader conversations of Platform 5280 that this new platform will transcend the labels of conference or forum or exhibition, which there was a lot of that in the last biennial. I mean, there were art exhibitions, but there were also these fantastic forums around energy and women and poverty reduction and things like that. So what does that mean? What is that expectation when you say that it's going to transcend conference, forum, and exhibition?
Well, I guess I think about it this way. You know, you got people like Gayle who are very humble and, you know, self-deprecating in a way, but who are can-do entrepreneurial people and who don't want to just sit around and talk about something forever. And that's kind of the spirit that I think that we want to bring to this event. It's the conversation is great, but where is it going? What's the outcome? How is it going to benefit you and your business? How can you kind of put what you learn to work? I mean, it's all about where it goes, as opposed to, you know, something like the world doesn't need another conference or another.
Sure.
So it's really I think our unique spin on it from here in Colorado has to be that energy and that spirit we bring to things. We don't always have the most resources or the best, you know, biggest brand name, whatever it might be. But what we have is an ability to sort of pull together, work together, cross political boundaries in a lot of cases in ways that you don't do in other places,
Sure.
and get some stuff done. And that's what we want the event to do. We want it to transcend any usual category you might put people in at any of those kind of more typical events you've mentioned. Transcend that a little bit and actually see some tangible, positive things come out of it.
Well, and Gayle, this is where I want to come to you. I know that you're very engaged in the board, and you played huge roles in a lot of the stuff that and your companies in the biennial historically and going forward. So what are the goals of the 2013 event for you, and what does it look like for you? What's success look like?
I've always been interested in an event like Davos, where you have people getting together and people that have enough stroke and enough influence that you can actually make a difference. And then you start looking at all the value that Colorado brings to the table. I mean, anybody that lives in Colorado loves it here. Hopefully, Abaseh, you have seen the difference of Colorado not only being the best place in the world, but having the best people. But if you could imagine, and I think everybody here does, of having that kind of an event, that we can actually start a bunch of ideas and maybe even export these ideas. I don't think there's any place like it in the whole world. So I think we have a tremendous responsibility to work together, to get things done, to have some sort of a model that other people can take. And it's not just about art. I think that art is the part that's sort of the neutral subject matter that everybody can relate to. But it gives people a chance to go work together, meet with each other, and then be able to go spark a lot of activity.
I would agree with you, Gayle, and I think what Erin said is exactly right on. It's a very well balanced project. It's just that, you know, I think art suddenly stands out more often. But the program is equally, from its economic components, it's equally distributed between the art and the thought, you know, which we call it thought because we're not dictating any specific outcomes. We're not advocating. We're not a political organization. We're a non-for-profit, Denver-based organization that is trying to create a more honest and more, you know, results-oriented conversation on different fronts, but we're not necessarily advocating this is better than the other. We're putting the platform for you to present your thoughts and tailor it for what your specific circumstance is. The reality is that poverty or education or democracy is very different perceived in Brazil, in the favelas, than it is even in a poor district in the greater Denver.
Sure.
You know, so we need to, I think what is unique about this platform is that we need to start recognizing that ideas are great and people have amazing organizations and do resolve a lot of problems. But exporting it just without knowing the context of where you're exporting it to might not be the best efficient use. Maybe creating a dialogue, understanding the circumstance that the other human being is living under, and then taking your best practices, having a conversation, and then applying it might yield better results. And so, whereas, you know, last time around, many of the conversations, the roundtables that were held were more issue specific, like poverty or education. This time, they're the overarching issues that then education, poverty, health, well-being fall under. But they're greater discussions, and they're actually conversations, much like the one we're having now.
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask you a question. So Jen introduced me as the publisher of Icosa magazine.
Yeah.
She humbly didn't somehow mention that she is the editor of Icosa magazine, which means that she does all the work. And she also runs this radio show, and she also helped a lot with the biennial.
Yes,
so
we
Jan,
do.
can you tell us what you saw at the biennial and why you were so interested in helping and what you see?
Well, you know, I think the biennial in 2010 was this fantastic collaboration of everybody engaged in the hemisphere. So it was from the tip of Canada to the tip of South America, and people really came to town from to really engage in these conversations. And while there wasn't a formalized follow-up mechanism on the backside, it really created this environment of art, of culture, of dance, of food, of so many things, but also of these bigger conversations around poverty and education and those different things. And what I loved about it is it was people from all walks of life. So it was academia, it was business, it was community organizations, and it was government leadership really coming together to create this conversation of best practices that then the audience could go out there and say, ooh, that struck me, or ooh, that struck me. And I thought that was really interesting. So I'm really interested to see how the platform of art and thought come together in a smaller venue. It sounds like this time, yes?
Well, it's actually the best of both worlds, as you know, the way I see it is that you are going to have those 4 evenings where you go to the symposiums at the Buell this time around, not at the Ellie, but at the Buell, and you're inspired. These are the Bill Gates of the world, the Oprah Winfreys of the world, because they, with their practices or with the philosophy that they've tried to impart, whether it was with their business or with the philanthropic movement that they started, have defined a new way of communication. So in the 4 different areas that we have that I'm happy to go into greater detail, you have that. But then I always, when I went to these conferences, like Erin was saying, I would walk out of that talk and I'd be all riled up, but then I'd be like, well, what about me? What about 15 years ago when I was an executive director, or I wasn't the head of the agency, you know, and I was younger and I was a staffer, but I wanted to be part of that conversation as well. And I think it is really born from that I wanted there to be a part of the program that addressed all of us as peers. So during the day, there will be 3 clinicas, which are basically workshops, but the word clinica just sounds so much nicer. And there's something therapeutic to it and something. There will be peer-to-peer sessions. There are about 35 people and then 5 upper degree students, so PhD, master's and PhD students that are going to be able to apply to be in the room. And these are going to be peer-to-peer sessions that are going to be run by a professional workshop person. And everyone that goes in, so there is a bit of self-selection involved. About 15 people are from the greater, 15, 16 people are from the greater Denver and Colorado, and by that I mean California, Wyoming, Texas. We have I've met a lot of Texans in Denver, so we do have a national immigration, it seems, here present. So, you know, we're honoring our geographic location and not leaving people out. So it's like, if you're from New York, you cannot participate. If the person has a reason to be there, we would like them to honor us with their presence. And then the other part are people from the Americas. So we're doing a real job of, you know, every board member was sent a survey that asked them who are the people that inspire them at that level, and who are the people that they admire in our community. Who would they like to have in a room in a peer-to-peer session and have a conversation with? And we've done that not only with our board members, but pretty much we subject every meeting, and I've had over 150 meetings with community leaders mostly, and with private sector representatives. And every time that Erin or Gayle or yourself, there's a meeting facilitated for me to meet someone, pretty much there's a follow-up that says, what inspires you? What would you want? What would you want to resolve? So there'll be, depending on the clinica, there will be very Colorado-focused problems to resolve during the resolution portion, or there will be an Americas focus one. So I'll give an example. For instance, we have the new language of business. That's one of the symposium evenings. What does it mean, new language of business? And many people would relate it to Steve Jobs and everything that, in a way, Steve Jobs brought together. So we did our own research. So we kind of act as the Ernst & Young or the McKinsey organization, and we have that kind of skill in our team. We did all the research, and we decided that for us, what was important was social entrepreneurship, innovation, and creative industries. That these 3 ingredients, that when you looked at companies that are successful, they had a balance of these 3 or maybe one more. And then we looked around who's very active in Denver and in Colorado. And we picked companies that we admire for that kind of behavior. For example, Western Union has a very strong social entrepreneurship. Their philosophy is very much based on that. So then the 3 clinicas are going to be innovation, social entrepreneurship, and creative industry. And that's how You take it from the top to the bottom, and then hopefully affect change by putting peers together.
Absolutely. Well, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll be talking more about the Biennial of the Americas and the Platform 5280 that's coming in the summer of 2013. And when we come back, we'll be talking with Erin Trapp, Gayle Dendinger, and Abaseh Mirvali more about the economic impacts that come from this, the cultural perspectives that come, and how you can engage with Platform 5280 as we get ready to head into that 2013 event. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Driving Force Radio, where we're seeking to discover what drives today's leaders. On today's show, we've been talking about Platform 5280, the Biennial of the Americas, which will be during the summer of 2013. And what's beautiful about this project, this work, is that it's really this celebration of global ideas, art, and people as they relate to history and diversity here in the Americas. It's the only one of its kind in the hemisphere. And that, again, is this fantastic thing. We are here in Denver, in the central part of the United States. We're sort of central from the tip of Canada to the tip of South America. And so we really provide this great collaborative venue, if you will, here in the Denver area to host something like the Biennial of the Americas. And before we went to break, Erin, I really wanted to come back to something that was so core in the 2010 event and certainly will be as we head into 2013. But what are some of the economic impacts and the cultural impacts that we saw from the first event and our expectations and perspectives for the 2013 event?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, Jan. You know, it's interesting. I view the past decade as almost something of a coming out for Denver. For a long time, those of us who lived here for decades have kind of liked that Colorado was a well-kept secret. You know, people who lived in nearby states understood what a great place it was to live, and people knew it was a good place to do business. But we were a little bit ambivalent, frankly, about letting the rest of the world know about it for fear of what might happen. And over the past maybe decade, you know, maybe when we hosted the Summit of the Eight, or when the Pope came to visit, or when we had big political conventions in town, people started realizing that actually having that kind of national attention was a good thing for the city in terms of the numbers of visitors it brought and what those people spent here in town, in terms of the types of businesses who came here for an event or a convention and said, gosh, this is a great place, you know, to live. Maybe I'd like to live here and I'll bring my company with me. Or this is a good place to recruit employees. I mean, everybody brings something different to why they love this place. And for us, the Biennial, the first event, really was about that entry point for every single person and what they could get out of it. From Mayor Hickenlooper, who had a couple of really instrumental things he wanted to do with it, which was develop an economic development kind of core event that would bring people who would stay in hotels, who would fly in here, who would decide, geez, it's a great place for a second home or a great place to invest in a business. Those core, but also had the kind of higher goals of how can we revitalize our civic center. And for him, that was a really big and important part of it. We had this beautiful building that started out as our town's central library that was renovated back into a cultural facility for this project. It had been sitting around for 50 years, housing offices for 150 employees who, you know, you only saw if you had a late tax bill. And people would go in there. I always likened it to the movie, the John Cusack movie, where he's in the 9.5 floor and he's kind of low drop ceilings.
John Malkovich.
Yeah. You know, that's what it was like going into that building. And for this event, we blew all that stuff out and opened it back up to the beautiful kind of, I think it's Beaux Arts, I've forgotten the architectural style, building that it was, and given that back as a gift. It's sort of a cultural gift to the citizens that the event did. And people come in there and see that and say, wow, this is my heritage, but this is also my future. And that's where kind of the cultural strands that we all can pick up on really start to come to life. Mm-hmm. So it's an event where there's something for everybody, and it's an event where the whole town, and you know, now we're doing more of that. The Biennial is something that's homegrown, it's long term, but we do a lot of these one-off events. We had the USA Pro Challenge, which came to town last year, which was fantastically exciting internationally. Cycling's the thing people love all the world all around, and people say, wow, Colorado's a great place to do that. Those same people, we might say, hey, you know, now we want you to come and be a part of the Biennial. Next thing you know, they're being recruited for a business. So for me, it's a very organic process, a very long-term process, but there are so many different benefits for the city, the state, and the region that you almost can't enumerate them all. And the idea is there's something for every single person.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Gayle, I want to go off of what Erin was just saying, you know, that it's this long-term process. And I know you and I have discussed this, that this really isn't one of those short-term hits where you just get right out of the blocks something from it, that it's more of this intermediate to long-term effort. Can you talk about that and what successful outcome looks like for you or for business or for the areas of interest for you?
I think it's real interesting how much honesty comes through when you're not on a camera. So I thought the 2 or 3 minutes when we talked about real problems and real opportunities was great. And I think one thing that we all forget is that an investment, whether it's a business, your family, a project like this, an event, takes a long time. And I think one of the things that we all suffer from is impatience. And we've just been in business now 30 years. We're to the point right now we're working on a 100-year plan, but we had to get the first 30 years under our belt. And I see the same thing here. So I think you're coming in with a lot of great assets, but it's kind of tough when you had one batch of people that started round one, and then you're starting over and you've got a few different philosophies that other people don't have, and then you get some knucklehead like me that, you know, to me art is you know, velvet dogs playing poker, you know, and everything that I'm looking at is, you know, how can I turn this into business? So I think that's what we learned when we were off the camera for a minute, is that we have to be patient. And you mentioned a little bit that there's another city here on the East Coast that occasionally beats us in football. I'm not going to go mention that. We beat them sometimes in football, but generally they beat us equally as much. And we really do not want to be a second best city. So I think, you know, not only are we this great place to live, and now we're starting to see all the great business opportunities, starting to see venues like you were talking about, Erin, but I think the people have to invest in our future. And the future is not the Chamber of Commerce where you go down there, you know, plunk down your $500 and then expect to get a lot of business from it, or to go invest in something like the Biennial and then, you know, think that you're going to get, you know, a huge contract in Argentina or Brazil because of it. You might. One of the things that we're working with all the time is we're a logistics company, and it takes a long time for people to break into international markets. They have to understand the rules of the game. They have to build the connections, a lot of different things. So I think we are expecting a little bit too much if we expect this kind of results. And I think as business people, we have to realize that we have to invest. We have to invest in building the relationships. Am I getting the point a little bit better now, Abaseh?
Yeah, and Abaseh, I wanted to ask that. You know, he's talking about investing in the future, and I know we were talking about that there is one other city with significant investment that is not spent in this city for our efforts at the Biennial and the Platform 5280. And it really is this investment, and I want you to expound on that and what he's saying and respond to Erin and Gayle's commentary.
Well, I completely am you know, with Erin, because she has had this kind of dual life in a way, because she worked for the city and has all those economic concerns having represented, but she sees the importance of culture. So she was kind of like the integral person in being able to communicate to the two sides to make this union work. So I always say that you know, it's not only experience, but it's what comes from your heart. So obviously there's a place, and I actually don't even know what kind of art, you know, Erin loves, but I know that she believes in the importance of those institutions existing, and I know that is what you feel, and most of my board really feels that. They might not even go to the Denver Art Museum or another, but they believe that institution is bettering our community because there's so many other people that do love it. Or the Bird Sanctuary, you know, whatever your love is in life, we need to strengthen all those community players. I think that what is key here is that same spirit that has led to Colorado and Denver and the people that are here being successful in their businesses is the same philosophy we have to apply to a project like this. A project like this will never have that big hundreds of person staff, because we're kind of, I always equate it, we're kind of like the protein pack to the Jamba Juice that you drink. You can buy it for 50 cents extra and you just get more power, you know, and we're an organization that's meant to be there to activate our already existing organizations by doing innovative programming. So what we're saying is that United Way or Habitat for Humanity or more very Denver specific projects such as the Red Line MCA, Museo de las Americas, other non-for-profit organizations in the education area or in environment, Nature Conservancy. Everybody is doing a great job. What can we bring by having the relationships that we individually have as well as an organization together? So if I call one entity and then Gayle has relationships with them and picks up the phone, and then Erin also through a friend that was in da-da-da, it's like a mass attack. How can you resist that? You can't resist that.
Sure.
So we're building up these relationships. That's kind of the way to approach it, that we are trying to strengthen the already existing organizations by providing these new projects. To do that, it's a long-term relationship. For another museum to trust that when their artifacts are coming to our museum here, that they're going to be taken care of in the proper way, that the shipping that's going to bring them here, that the installer that's installing it knows what they're doing with a pre-Columbian object. Well, it takes a little time. It just takes a little trust. But I would say that, looking around this room, and I was with you at a meeting, at a women's forum meeting the other day, we are people that, once we have a good relationship, I know that's the way I work. I go to that person. I try to work with that person. If that person has skills that are complementary to mine or is just brighter, I try to recruit them onto the project. So I don't know much about the video world. I don't know how those things are made. But in Buenos Aires, in the project I did last week, I went online to send some clips to people, and I saw that they make these 2-minute videos, and they were awesome. They were just great. And so I went and I asked, I said, who's this person? And they introduced me. It's like this kid. He's literally, I think, 28 years old. And I said, and I said to him, you do, this is your job? You have a company? He's like, yeah, I have a company, and it's like 4 of us. And, he gave me a quote. It's really, really reasonable quote. I have to say much, much more affordable than a quote that I'd gotten in London through one of our board members that wanted us to do the project in London. And they not only signed up, they're going to do it, they volunteered so much in in-kind services because they want the opportunity to come to Denver to find whether there's
to participate and collaborate.
Exactly.
And that's where I want to take it next, is collaborations really play such a big role in these enormous events and projects that go on. And I want each of you to go through, if you will, and just tell me about how you're collaborating with business, academia, government, community organizations, and what that looks like. How are you guys doing that? And are there ways that others can participate? Erin?
Well, when we were sitting here talking about other East Coast cities that shall remain nameless, I am remembering something I always say to people when I was working in the arts and culture. We're not Massachusetts. We're not the kind of place that wants to go and tax ourselves, for example, for more. That's just not who we are. Who we are is a collaborative city, to your question, in case you were wondering where in the world I was going with this. We are the kind of place where people sit around, originally maybe it was a campfire or something like that, and now it is a boardroom. But people sit around and say, what's in our best interest now and in the longer term, and how are we going to get it done? And it isn't usually let's go see the government and get their help to get it done. It's how are we going to get it done here? And it might be the chamber, it might not be the chamber, it might be the Visitors Bureau, it might not, but it might be 2 or 3 interested citizens who say, hey, this is important to us and we're going to go do it. And so this project is really in that spirit as well. It's who can we bring to the table, the Gayle Dendingers of the world who get things done. People who go to big international events and have seen Davos and have seen Basel and can kind of bring that perspective to it. The people who are working on the ground here and are working with our local artists who really struggle to make a living, particularly in the past 5 years. How do we kind of showcase them for the world? For the nonprofits who are also out there raising money, how do we make sure that we're lifting all the boats? I mean, you really have to do it on every level because of the kind of place we are and because of the kind of event that is. And that just means going to people with honesty and integrity and just saying, hey, here's something we think it's going to help all of you. It may be something, to your point, Gayle, that it's going to be down the road. But it really is, let's not look at it as a pie that we have to fight over, but let's look at it as more pie for everybody.
I love that. So I want to come back to you guys then, Gayle and Abaseh. How can business and cultural organizations engage? Do you need them yet? Do you not?
We really.
What do we need to be
them.
doing right now?
We've now moved out of the kind of the brainstorming. It was It was a very, very challenging 8 months of really putting the right parameters to this project. That's another thing. Any successful business person knows that in order to ensure success of your product, you can't do everything. You can't be everything to everybody, and you can't do it all. You have to put some kind of degree of measurables out there. You have to put a parameter, and that's what we did. We put a parameter, not to enclose this, but for allow it to grow. Allow it to grow by bringing in more partners in the future. We don't need to achieve everything the first time around. We need to achieve integrity in the projects that we're embarking on for this time around. So if our topics for this next biennial are the new language of business, urban planning, sustainable development, and happy communities, future visionaries in the role of education, and democracy beyond elections, what does that mean for each one of our communities? If those are our 4 pillars and the thought component, they're going to be mirrored on the artistic side. So what does that really mean? When you're talking about the sustainable development, the urban planning, we have an amazingly, I mean, I'm not from Denver, I'm from a pretty beautiful state, the state of California, from San Francisco, and we're gorgeous, but you all, this weather, these mountains, there should be some thought given to the skyline of Denver, to what our city looks like, because that is the snapshot that is taken when you come in from the airport. You know, when you see that beautiful airport, then it should that should be your first point, and it should continue. We have these mountains, so what does it mean to do? How are we going to preserve the land? How are we going to preserve our resources? What does it mean to be in an urban city? Do we want people to have access to healthy food and to be able to walk around their park safely so that they're not, you know, obese, given that we're the most obese nation in the world, and
but the fittest state.
But the fittest state, exactly.
We always like to throw that in. Even though the fittest state, we are like now less fit than we were 10 years ago.
Exactly.
We're back where the least fit state was last time, but we're still holding on.
We're still holding on.
How do we hold on to that? How do we hold on to
Right.
that? So we have to think of everything integrative. And when you first asked Erin, you said, what does it mean beyond forms, beyond labels? Let's stop labeling each other. You know, I might not be a tremendous techie person, but I know when I see a good product, and if the business person that supports me with their generous sponsorship, then I can go get that best product for our city to show off what we have here, and then show off how we're open to what the other Americas people are saying. I think that's kind of another beauty that I never heard, and this was one of the reasons when Gayle was on my interview and I accepted this job, was because of the kind of leaders that were on my panel. Mike Freeze, our chairman, extraordinarily, you know, visionary community person, one of the top, you know, Fortune 100 CEOs in this country, a man that has closed billion-dollar deals. Humble. He, you know, Ted White, you know, Roxanne, everybody that we have on the board, Veronica, we just have an amazing board of people that are very humble and open to that dialogue. I think it's really important for us to change the table, is to say for once, we're not dictating to anyone how it should be. We're actually inviting you to come and talk to us so we can together figure it out, because we need to foster more relationships, to expand our businesses, to be ambassadors of our country in a time in history where it is difficult, where the name of our country has been compromised. So we are all ambassadors, and how we communicate with people, particularly Mexico, a border nation that has 10 million, there are 10 million Mexican Americans in our country. In Colorado, we boast having the happiest Latino community here. How does Colorado do it? Let's be a model to other states. So I think it's that openness and that, you know, that I think that's the spirit that we want to.
Just that spirit of Colorado.
I think that's going to be
how
great,
we are.
because people do feel dictated to in the other countries, particularly in our hemisphere. They feel we have been engaged in the political and social economic lives of many of the countries in Latin America. I think what a difference it is for the first time to say, we don't have all the answers. We want to figure it out with you. We want to invite you to Denver. The over 470 people that are going to go through those Clinicas.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gayle.
I
I'm
listened
interested
to what
in
you
your
were saying
perspectives.
for the first time differently. So there's 4 different areas that you're concentrating on, and each one of these takes the city that we have, and it's a multiplier. And I didn't catch that before. So it's not just different seminars or different speaking engagement. It truly is to bring people here and to have discussions to make our city stronger. in that light, can you go through the 4 different Clinicas or I guess the platforms that are made up of Clinicas that
and the cultural components, all of it. So
yeah, how they come together.
So
too.
and maybe we can put the visual of that, because we have it on a very beautiful color coded piece of paper. Your day starts with breakfast on your own, and then goes into a media event. A media kind of a rallying to get people excited. That happens for about an hour, and then we go straight into the Clinica, straight into working, the Colorado spirit. We're going to get in there, not be lectured to. We're going to go and be. So when you enter that room, you will have already had the binders, and you will know that Erin's sitting next to you, and what does Erin do, and why is Erin in that room next to you? And you're going to tackle the subject. So on the first day, you're going to have democracy beyond elections. What does democracy beyond elections mean? So, for example, we've really looked at the role that blogs play, and the entire Twitter, Facebook. Arab Spring happened on Facebook and Twitter. We really need to really look at these projects and honor them. So you have that. So you have the Clinicas, 3 of them in the daytime, and then in the afternoon you literally are going to have one of those buses. I love those buses in New York, or when you jump on the bus and then you can get off and you can go to the different cultural venues. We're going to have one of those buses, and we're going to go to all the different cultural partners that we have in the city. Every day has a different combination, and you're also going to see the public art component. We have an amazing city. Most Colorado folk are, outdoors folk. So we definitely thought that we must have a public art component, because it's being outdoors. And architecture. It is a city that is growing. So we want to recognize those issues. Day 2, you have the new language of business. What does it mean to be a successful business in the future? Steve Jobs said it. Pixar did not become Pixar overnight. Anyone that tells you that something became successful overnight is not telling the truth.
Right.
That is what the man said, and he turned it around to having 2 of the top companies in the world. And day 3, we go into future visionaries, current and future, and the role of education, but not traditional education. It is not about it's not about just K through 12 or about having college degrees. It's about education in all the forms it comes to. Strengthening our community colleges, technical information. We need serious technical expertise in our country. Technicians, all those people.
Sure.
So honoring what education means in the greater sense, not just where you go to a classroom. And on the last day, another area where Colorado is very strong on, and the continent that is so beautiful, the Americas, is urban planning, sustainable development, and happy communities. We all work all the time. We deserve to be happy in our community. We deserve to enjoy our community. We have the right to enjoy our parks, to enjoy our streets, to enjoy what is given to us. So it's about creating a healthier, happier place. And we have Michael Van Gilder, the company that we were housed so generously for the last year, is one of the best companies to work for, because they have a philosophy of having a state-of-the-art gym, and a fruit basket, and walking around with the CEO on one Wednesday of the month. Those are the kind of philosophies we really want to share and say, it works here. Maybe we can adapt them and work them with you.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So,
it's a tremendous vision. I'm sorry, I feel kind of silly. I already talked about my lack of education and so on.
But in
Which
this
is not
context,
true.
we have a whole different kind of education, right?
But it's fun to talk about.
Yeah, he's
but
just
boy,
taking
this
shots
really
himself.
helps
Yeah,
me
exactly.
understand what's really going on here. So I think that part of the problem, or part of the role for all of us, is to be better ambassadors for you. I think the vision is very strong. I really like the fact that there's almost a business plan, and these are components of actually turning the business plan
There
into
really
action.
is. There really is, Gayle. And I think the biggest challenge, the greatest challenge, is exactly what you all have said, is that the message is not a single word. We're not, it's not about reforestation. You can't say it in one word. We're not, we hope to help on that front. We hope to help education in the K through 12. But we want to be realistic about what our mission is. We want to be able to kind of take Erin, take Gayle, take Mike, take Jan, squeeze out what we can and gift it to other people as much as you can give, because you already cut in 6 other ways, by being parents, by being friends, by being spouses, by being professionals, and by being volunteers, which is one of the most amazing things I've learned as an American of Iranian heritage, that we in this country volunteer and we participate in our community. And
That's
I
great.
think that's what's really important. So there
Erin,
really
before
is.
we go, what do you guys need from the community to really take this to the next level here in the next 12
Ownership.
months?
I mean, I think that if the project is going to succeed, the community needs to own it. They have to understand that this is something that's for them and that's going to benefit the whole community down the road. And, you know, you can do that in lots of different ways, but if I had to sum it up in one word, that's what I would say.
So
I
ownership
think
means sponsorship, means volunteers, means what do you
being
need,
a
Abaseh?
friend of the Biennial. We have a youth division. We're going to have a youth component for young friends of the Biennial of the Americas, Platform 5280, and the Friends of the So this is a very community level participation that is very little economic, but enough for you to know that you have a part, you have a stake in this. From just seeking us out, going to our webpage and sending us a note and communicating with us about wanting to be a volunteer. We need lots of volunteers, particularly when the execution phase comes through. Of sharing our ideas, who inspires you, who do you want to see from our community speak to you, what are the best practices that you've seen. But I would say that taking ownership in that unnamed city in the East Coast, the people of the city take ownership of it. Even people that are not involved, they know that that event is taking place. They know that the restaurants are going to be filled that week when people come in during the 11 weeks that the project goes on. And they just are even more friendlier. And we certainly have so much more to offer in our city of just really being out there and saying, this is how it's going to benefit everybody in the long term.
Absolutely. Well, to volunteer, to sponsor, or to truly take on the ownership of Platform 5280 and the Biennial of the Americas in summer of 2013, go to platform5280.org, communicate with these fantastic leaders, tell them what you think, tell them who inspires you, get engaged, and truly make change here in the Denver metro area. Have a great weekend.